Welcome to Mystery Vault Stories. In today's episode, we delve into The Old Stone House and Other Stories by Anna Katharine Green, a master of early detective fiction. These tales bring together suspense, intrigue, and sharp detective work, offering a glimpse into the mind of one of the genre's pioneers. As we explore the mysteries in this collection, prepare yourself for unexpected twists and carefully woven clues that challenge both characters and readers alike. Stay tuned as we uncover the secrets hidden within the pages of these timeless stories. The Old Stone House. I was riding along one autumn day through a certain wooded portion of New York State when I came suddenly upon an old stone house in which the marks of age were in such startling contrast to its unfinished condition that I involuntarily stopped my horse and took a long survey of the lonesome structure. Embowered in a forest which had so grown in thickness and height since the erection of this building that the boughs of some of the tallest trees almost met across its decayed roof, it presented even at first view an appearance of picturesque solitude almost approaching to desolation. But when my eye had time to note that the moss was clinging to eaves from under which the scaffolding had never been taken, and that of the 10 large windows in the blackened front of the house, only 2 had ever been furnished with frames, the awe of some tragic mystery began to creep over me, and I sat and wondered at the sight till my increasing interest compelled me to alight and take a nearer view of the place. The great front door, which had been finished so many years ago, but which had never been hung, leaned against the side of the house, of which it had almost become a part, so long had they clung together amid the drippings of innumerable rains. Close beside it yawned the entrance, a large black gap through which nearly a century of storms had rushed with their winds and wet till the lintels were green with moisture and slippery with rot. Standing on this untrod threshold, I instinctively glanced up at the scaffolding above me and started as I noticed that it had partially fallen away, as if time were weakening its supports and making the precipitation of the whole a threatening possibility. Alarmed lest it might fall while I stood there, I did not linger long beneath it, but with a shudder which I afterwards remembered, stepped into the house and proceeded to inspect its rotting, naked, and unfinished walls. I found them all in the one condition. A fine house had once been planned and nearly completed, but it had been abandoned before the hearths had been tiled, or the wainscoting nailed to its place. The staircase which ran up through the center of the house was without banisters, but otherwise finished, and in a state of fair preservation. Seeing this and not being able to resist the temptation which it offered me of inspecting the rest of the house, I ascended to the second story. Here the doors were hung and the fireplaces bricked, and as I wandered from room to room, I wondered more than ever what had caused the desertion of so promising a dwelling. If, as appeared, the first owner had died suddenly, why could not an heir have been found? And what could be the story of a place so abandoned and left to destruction that its walls gave no token of ever having offered shelter to a human being? As I could not answer this question, I allowed my imagination full play and was just forming some weird explanation of the facts 3 minutes, 38 seconds before me when I felt my arm suddenly seized from behind and paused aghast. Was I then not alone in the deserted building? Was there some solitary being who laid claim to its desolation and betrayed jealousy at any intrusion within its mysterious precincts? Or was the dismal place haunted by some uneasy spirit who with long, uncanny fingers stood ready to clutch the man who presumed to bring living hopes and fears into a spot dedicated entirely to memories? I had scarcely the courage to ask, but when I turned and saw what it was that had alarmed me, I did not know whether to laugh at my fears or feel increased awe of my surroundings. For it was the twigs of a tree which had seized me, and for a long limb such as this to have grown into a place intended for the abode of man necessitated a lapse of time and a depth of solitude oppressive to think of. Anxious to be rid of suggestions well-nigh bordering upon the superstitious, I took one peep from the front windows and then descended to the first floor. The sight of my horse quietly dozing in the summer sunlight had reassured me, and by the time I had recrossed the dismal threshold and regained the cheerful highway, I was conscious of no emotions deeper than the intense interest of a curious mind to solve the mystery and understand the secret of this remarkable house. Rousing my horse from his comfortable nap, I rode on through the forest. But scarcely had I gone a dozen rods before the road took a turn, the trees suddenly parted, and I found myself face to face with wide rolling meadows and a busy village. So then, this ancient and deserted house was not in the heart of the woods, as I had imagined, but in the outskirts of a town and face to face with life and activity. This discovery was a shock to my romance, but as it gave my second curiosity and immediate hope of satisfaction, I soon became reconciled to the situation, and taking the road which led to the village, drew up before the inn and went in, ostensibly for refreshment. This being speedily provided, I sat down in the cozy dining room, and as soon as opportunity offered, asked the attentive landlady why the old house in the woods had remained so long deserted. She gave me an odd look and then glanced aside at an old man who sat doubled up in the opposite corner. "It is a long story," said she, "and I am busy now, but later, if you wish to hear it, I will tell you all we know on the subject. After father is gone out," she whispered, "it always excites him to hear any talk about that old place." 6 minutes, 22 seconds I saw that it did. I had no sooner mentioned the house than his white head lifted itself with something like spirit, and his form, which had seemed a moment before so bent in age, straightened with an interest that made him look almost hale again. "I will tell you," he broke in, "I am not busy. I was 90 last birthday, and I forget sometimes my grandchildren's names, but I never forget what took place in that old house one night 50 years ago. Never, never." I know," hastily interposed his daughter. "You remember beautifully, but this gentleman wishes to eat his dinner now and must not have his appetite interfered with. You will wait, will you not, sir, till I have a little more leisure?" What could I answer but yes, and what could the poor old man do but shrink back into his corner, disappointed and abashed? Yet I was not satisfied, nor was he, as I could see by the appealing glances he gave me now and then from under the fallen masses of his long white hair. But the landlady was complacent and moved about the table and in and out of the room with a bustling air that left us but little opportunity for conversation. At length she was absent somewhat longer than usual, whereupon the old man, suddenly lifting his head, cried out, "She cannot tell the story. She has no feeling for it. She wasn't—" "And you were," I ventured. "Yes, yes, I was there, always there. And I see it all now," he murmured. "50 years ago, and I see it all as if it were happening at this moment before my eyes. But she will not let me talk about it," he complained as the sound of her footsteps was heard again on the kitchen boards. "Though it makes me young again, she always stops me just as if I were a child. But she cannot help my showing you—" Here her steps became audible in the hall, and his words died away on his lips. By the time she had entered, he was seated with his head half turned aside, and his form bent over, as if he were in spirit 1,000 miles from the spot. Amused at his cunning, and interested in spite of myself at the childish eagerness he displayed to tell his tale, I waited with a secret impatience, almost as great as his own perhaps, for her to leave the room again, and thus give him the opportunity of finishing his sentence. At last there came an imperative call for her presence without, and she hurried away. She was no sooner gone than the old man exclaimed, "I have it all written down. I wrote it years and years ago, at the very time it happened. She cannot keep me from showing you that. No, no, she cannot keep me from showing you that." And rising to his feet with a difficulty that for the first time revealed to me the full extent of his infirmity, he hobbled slowly across the floor to the open door, through which he passed with many cunning winks and nods. It grows quite exciting, thought I, and half feared his daughter would not allow him to return. But either she was too much engrossed to heed him, or had been too much deceived by his seeming indifference when she last entered the room, to suspect the errand which had taken him out of it. For sooner than I had expected, in quite some few minutes before she came back herself, he shuffled in again, carrying 9 minutes, 36 seconds, under his coat a roll of yellow paper, which he thrust into my hand with a gratified leer, saying, "There it is. I was a gay young lad in those days, and could go and come with the best. Read it, sir. Read it, and if Maria says anything against it, tell her it was written long before she was born, and when I was as pert as she is now, and a good deal more observing. Chuckling with satisfaction, he turned away and had barely disappeared in the hall when she came in and saw me with the roll in my hand. "Well, I declare," she exclaimed, "and has he been bringing you that? Whatever shall I do with him and his everlasting manuscript? You will pardon him, sir. He is 90 and upwards, and thinks everybody's as interested in the story of that old house as he is himself." "And I, for one, am," was my hasty reply. "If the writing is at all legible, I am anxious to read it. You won't object, will you?" "Oh, no," was her good-humored rejoinder. "I won't object. I only hate to have father's mind roused on this subject, because he is sure to be sick after it. But now that you have the story, read it. Whether you will think as he did on a certain point is another question." "Iden. But then father always said I would never believe ill of anybody." Her smile certainly bore out her words. It was so good-tempered and confiding, and pleased with her manner in spite of myself. I accepted her invitation to make use of her own little parlor, and sat down in the glow of a brilliant autumn afternoon to read this old-time history. Will Juliet be at home today? She must know that I am coming. When I met her this morning, tripping back from the farm, I gave her a look which, if she cares anything about me, must have told her that I would be among the lads who would be sure to pay her their respects at early candlelight. For I cannot resist her saucy pout and dancing dimples any longer. Though I am barely 20, I am a man, and one who is quite forehanded and able to take unto himself a wife. Ralph Erfistone has both wife and babe, and he was only 21 last August. Why, then, should I not go courting, when the prettiest maid that has graced the town for many a year holds out the guerdon of her smiles to all who will vie for them? To be sure, the fact that she has more than one wooer already may be considered detrimental to my success. But love is fed by rivalry, and if Colonel Schuyler does not pay her his addresses, I think my chances may be considered as good as anyone's. For am I not the tallest and most straightly built man in town? And have I not a little cottage all my own, with the neatest of gardens behind it, and an apple tree in 12 minutes, 22 seconds front, whose blossoms hang ready to shower themselves like rain upon the head of her who will enter there as a bride? It is not yet dark, but I will forestall the sunset by a half hour and begin my visit now. If I am first at her gate, Lemuel Phillips may look less arrogant when he comes to ask her company to the next singing school. I was not first at her gate. 2 others were there before me. Ah, she is prettier than ever I supposed, and chirper than the sparrow which builds every year a nest in my old apple tree. When she saw me come up the walk, her cheeks turned pink, but I do not know if it was from pleasure or annoyance, for she gave nothing but vexing replies to every compliment I paid her. But then Lemuel Phillips fared no better, and she was so bittersweet to Orrin Day that he left in a huff and vowed he would never step across her threshold again. I thought she was a trifle more serious after he had gone, but when a woman's eyes are as bright as hers, and the frowns and smiles with which she disports herself chase each other so rapidly over a face both mischievous and charming, a man's judgment goes astray, and he scarcely knows reality from seeming. But true or false, she is pretty as a harebell and bright as glinting sunshine, and I mean to marry her, if only Colonel Schuyler will hold himself aloof. Colonel Schuyler may hold himself aloof, but he is a man like the rest of us for all that. Yesterday, as I was sauntering in the churchyard, waiting for the appearance of a certain white-robed figure crowned by the demurest of little hats, I caught a glimpse of his face as he leaned on one of the tombstones near Patience Goodyear's grave, and I saw that he was waiting also for the same white figure and the same demure hat. This gave me a shock, for though I had never really dared to hope he would remain unmoved by a loveliness so rare in our village, and indeed, as I take it, in any village, I did not think he would show so much impatience, or await her appearance with such burning and uncontrollable ardor. Indeed, I was so affected by his look that I forgot to watch any longer for her coming, but kept my gaze fixed on his countenance, till I saw, by the change which rapidly took place in it, that she had stepped out of the great church door and was now standing before us, making the sunshine more brilliant by her smiles, and the spring the sweeter for her presence. Then I came to myself and rushed forward with the rest of the lads. Did he follow behind us? I do not think so, for the rosy lips which had smiled upon us with so airy a welcome soon showed a discontented curve, not to be belied by the merry words that issued from them. And when we would have escorted her across the fields to her father's house, she made a mocking curtsy and wandered away with the ugliest old crone who mouths and mumbles in the meeting-house. Did she do this to mock us or him? If to mock him, he had best take care, for beauty scorned is apt to grow dangerous. But perhaps it was to mock us? Well, well, there would be nothing new in that. She is ever mocking us. They say the colonel passes her gate a dozen times a day, but never goes in and never looks up. Is he indifferent then? I cannot think so. Perhaps he fears her caprices and disapproves of her coquetry. If that is so, she shall be my wife before he wakens to the knowledge that her coquetry hides a passionate and loving heart. Colonel Schuyler is a dark man. He has eyes which pierce you, and a smile which, if it could be understood, might perhaps be less fascinating than it is. If she has noticed his watching her, the little heart that flutters in her breast must have beaten faster by many a throb. For he is the one great man within 20 miles, and so handsome and above us all, that I do not know of a woman but Juliet, whose voice does not sink a tone lower whenever she speaks of him. But he is a proud man, and seems to take no notice of anyone. Indeed, he scarcely appears to live in our world. Will he come down from his high estate at the beck of this village beauty? Many say not, but I say yes. With those eyes of his, he cannot help it. I might do the same if her pleading eyes would let me, but she seems to cling to me even when she is most provokingly saucy. And though I cannot see any love in her manner, there is something in it very different from hate, and this it is which holds me. Can a woman be too pretty for her own happiness, and are many lovers a weariness to the heart? Juliet is positively unhappy. Today when she laughed, the gayest it was to hide her tears, and no one, not even a thoroughly spoiled beauty, could be as wayward as she if there were not some bitter arrow rankling in her heart. She was riding down the street on a pillion behind her father, and Colonel Schuyler, who had been leaning on the gate in front of his house, turned his back upon her and went inside when he saw her coming. Was this what made her so white and reckless when she came up to where I was standing with Orenday? And was it her chagrin at the great man's apparent indifference which gave that sharp edge to the good morning with which she rode haughtily away? If it was, I can forgive you, my lady bird, for there is reason for your folly if I am any judge of my fellow men. Colonel Schuyler is not indifferent but circumspect, and circumspection in a lover is an insult to his lady's charms. She knows now what I knew a week ago. Colonel Schuyler is in love with her and will marry her if she does not play the coquette with him. She knows now what I knew a week ago. Colonel Schuyler is in love with her and will marry her if she does not play the coquette with him. He has been to her house, and her father already holds his head higher as he paces up and down the street. I am left in the lurch, and if I had not foreseen this end to my hopes, might have been a very miserable man tonight. For I was near obtaining the object of my heart, as I know from her own lips, though the words were not intended for my ears. You see, I was the one who surprised him talking with her in the garden. I had been walking around the place on the outer side of the wall, as I often did from pure love for her, and not knowing she was on the other side, was very much startled when I heard her voice speaking my name. So much startled that I stood still in my astonishment, and thus heard her say, "Philo, Adams has a little cottage all his own, and I can be mistress of it any day." Or so he tells me. I had rather go into that little cottage where every board I trod on would be my own, than live in the grandest room you could give me in a house of which I would not be the mistress. "But if I make a home for you," he pleaded, "grand as my father's, but built entirely for you." "Ah," was her soft reply, "that might make me listen to you, for I should then think you loved me." Unraveling the mysteries alongside us. If you found these stories intriguing, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more classic detective tales. Until next time, keep your mind sharp and your curiosity alive, as there's always another mystery waiting to be solved.